Today I'm joined here at Illuminations in JLT in Dubai by clinical hypnotherapist, Dr. Yuvraj Kapadia, and we're talking about something where I know the majority don't know about. A growing minority do know about it because they've experienced it and they're going through it, and that is the 2012 Ascension or Spiritual Awakening. My take on this is it's a massive shift in consciousness, not only on planet Earth, but it affects everybody living on it. So I want to know your understanding of it, because I saw a small workshop about you talking about it, and that was the reason I wanted to interview you, because I haven't spoke to anybody about this on camera yet. And not only do you come from a spiritual background, you come from, you know, a clinical scientific background. So together, I felt there was more of a balance.
That's right. Firstly, thank you for having me on your show. This is a pleasure and an honor both, because it gives me a platform to be able to speak on a subject which is very close to my heart. I hypothesize Earth as a school, and every school has a curriculum, and a curriculum in which students enroll for a specific purpose. So as a school, we're a race where our DNA creates reality. This is medically and scientifically established both.
Yeah.
And the way we feel has a huge bearing on our gene expression.
Yes.
Which means if you put 2 and 2 together, it's not a rocket science to come to the conclusion that as you feel, you create. And that entire process of creation via feeling is getting you more into touch with the master that you truly are. We all believe that we come from a source, which means at a different level, if I were to use a Sanskrit term, which is Aham Brahmasmi, it simply maintains I am the creator of my universe. And the Earth School exemplifies that extremely well. Now, we've been locked in this school for a fairly long period of time. The 4 walls of this school are time, space, choice, and consequence.
Yeah.
Which basically means you're coming into the school to crack or decode your mastery. How do you do it? There are choices that you make with free will. Each choice that you make is built on a certain emotion or a feeling that you'd like to experience. That guides your choices. And those choices, eventually, because you've created those choices, become consequences, which is what you call as destiny. And this opens up the whole Pandora's box of karma and so on and so forth.
It's a very, very tough school, this Earth School, though. And I realized it more the older I get.
Absolutely. It's not every person's cup of tea to be very fine and comfortable to let go of your original state, which is to be an infinite entity, and come into this extremely limiting form where you are a brutally limited personality.
Well, it says, it's what they say, isn't it? It's just spiritual beings having a temporary human experience.
Absolutely.
And you are restricted in your body, you're restricted with your programs, your culture, maybe religion, upbringing, and you know that really you're kind of suppressed in many ways.
That's right. If we look at the different eras that human consciousness on Earth has gone through, we've actually come down the ages. So from the golden age, we've come down to the silver age, to the copper age, and now we're in the iron age.
So you're talking like Kali Yuga and stuff.
Yeah, all the yugas or all the manvantars that you go through.
Yeah.
And each one of them has represented a denigration of consciousness on Earth.
Yeah.
Why have we gone through this? Simply because we have a carbon-based body. And this carbon-based body is akin to, let's say, a 40-watt bulb. Where we come from, our source, is like a 1,000,000-watt power plant. So in this experiment of the Earth School, when a 1,000,000-watt power plant was supplied to your body obviously couldn't handle that. And hence the golden age was a big disaster. Atlantis, Lemuria, and all these civilizations came to an end, not because people were ignorant, but people just had no clue how to handle the power that they have.
Yeah.
And hence the model that looks after the school needed to tweak the magnetic axis of the Earth, which allows for slightly lower power to come to humans, which means ignorance between you and source increases just that little bit, and then the silver, then the copper, and now here we are.
Well, it's kind of like, to explain that really in a simple way to most people is that imagine I'm a tarot card reader and I have so much knowledge and power about the future, I could abuse it to the max.
Absolutely.
So when you have this kind of spiritual power, you have to use it with respect because it's been given to you as a gift.
That is correct. Around 1983, the Earth started to experience something very funny or very peculiar. And that was something that hadn't been observed for eons together. And that was a shift in what we call as the wobble of the Earth. And in physics, that resonance is called the Schumann Resonance.
Yes.
The Schumann Resonance was first discovered by a German physicist called Otto Schumann. His conclusion was that the resonance of the Earth is at a standard 7.8 cycles per second. And that number has been a constant
Rising.
for the longest period of time.
But why is it rising?
Funny thing that happened from 1983 onwards is that the Schumann resonance started to rise. Why was it rising? Because more and more people on Earth were attuning their awareness and consciousness to asking, why is this happening to me?
Yeah, and I also find that, when you start spiritually waking up, there's questions. What is my purpose? Why am I here? What is my mission? It's not even to do with materialism. It's like the soul
Correct.
has woken up to say, hang on a minute, what is your real purpose for being here?
Now that's a massive shift of consciousness, because the why me inquiry is your first step to understanding that you are the God who created it.
Well, I've had enough spiritual epiphanies for me to have to look into this and what was happening. And I did think I was mentally going crazy. And I was put for 6 months on antidepressants because a doctor couldn't understand it because he had not had that experience or knowledge.
Absolutely.
And I knew it wasn't that. Intuitively, I was so in tune, I knew it wasn't this. And when I delved into it, I remember watching people talking about so-called levels of consciousness rising, the shift, spiritual awakening. They must have had 600 views or something 7-8 years ago. They have 1 million followers now. And it showed me how many people are going through this and waking up. So YouTube and all this has really been a powerful way of measuring who is following this. And if you look at meditation, I listen to a lot of meditation at night music. Millions of people are not sleeping. They're all trying, something is going on,
Right.
And the well-being courses, the workshops, Illuminations, people like you, it's growing, and I'm not as embarrassed or confused to talk about it because I don't think I'm crazy. I found my tribe to tell me you're not,
Absolutely. At some junction, destiny will choose its unique moment to just pick you up at the right time. You're just going to zone into what you're meant to do. And through life's own twists and turns, I found myself in 2002, 2003, suddenly looking at all this, I was born with prolapsed heart valves. It's a condition that you cannot medically reverse. I lost an enormous amount of money with the stock markets in 1993, and I just wasn't getting a breakthrough anywhere at all, including even very, very strong attempts to end my existence, and how you go through. So I've been through a near-death experience. Yeah, it's the dark night of the soul. I've been there,
and I
came out of it after a while.
But I think everyone who goes through this process, the spiritual awakening, has to go, which I didn't even know what the dark night of the soul was when I was going through it. You have to go through it to clear the ego as well, and the programming. And it's a horrible thing to go through.
Oh, it's painful,
it's the most painful thing. But you come out so much with more clarity. But when you're going through it, there are times of suicidal thoughts or loneliness or isolation. And I think we're so lucky now. I mean, you must have gone through it much earlier. Now we have YouTube, people can share it.
That's right. That's right. And the funny part is I had no logical reason for what I was going through. And then in 2002, somebody suggested, why don't you look inside to try and find an answer? And I attended a meditation class in Mumbai pretty randomly, looking for an answer because, it's the last hope that you have.
Yeah.
And strangely enough, I went through 13 past lives on the trot on my own.
Wow.
With a voice in my head. You can call it my intuition or a guide or whatever you wish. And that explained in 2.5 hours to me everything that I couldn't understand. Yeah. And when I came out of it, 2 things were very clear. The voice said, your heart is fine. And it was okay. The valves were gone. and I was off medication fully.
This is the thing, because when you spiritually align yourself, you're supposed to heal yourself.
That's right.
And this is what happens.
That was the biggest game changer in my head. Because coming from a family of doctors, I went through something that all my medical family couldn't achieve.
Yeah.
And the financial problem ended itself in about 3 months, which then told me that everything that's happening to my life is in me, it's in my mind. I still had no idea about this. And then that same intuition or voice in my head says, chill, you will take this global, this is your job, and this will all come to you, your teacher will come to you. And then of course a year later, Sunny Satin from the US came, I joined, I studied, and then something started to open up. So I'm a poorly read person, but I've gone through a lot of phases where I just know that I know, and I can't explain that.
That's your soul. You know, they say everything's within you.
Yeah.
It's like a little library that suddenly opens up and you're like, I don't need to read this, but I know it 150%.
That's right. And strangely enough, the last thing my teacher did before he passed away was he finished writing a book on the shift.
Amazing. I need to read this book.
Yeah, it's called Incredibly Believable by Dr. Sunny Satin. He released the book, he passed away a week later.
Wow.
And I think after he passed away, I got his company, I took it over, and in a way his blessing or legacy simply flowed. And since then, I just knew that I knew many things about the shift. It was as if he had handed over the baton, he wrote a book. And the funny part is, the moment my mind opened to it, information started to come.
Yeah. And they call it a download.
Yeah.
And you're like, where is this coming from? And it
was weird.
It's really weird.
It was weird. So if I had a thought saying, oh, it looks like this, and the next day I will find an article in Science that completely matches what I'm trying to explain, which is how I could create this talk on Ascension, which I've given to different, because I use a lot of science in that. So right from going to the Mayan contributions to how the Mayan calendars spoke of this massive shift of consciousness that was going to happen by 2012, to the complete space where we are operating on a double-stranded carbon DNA, and yet science says that we function just on 3% of our expressed DNA, which means, is the human race so obsolete that the balanced 97% DNA that we carry is useless? Is it junk? And then you have the whole Russian scientists who are now saying, no, that 97% DNA is the precursor to what is now going to wake up in human consciousness as this multi-12-stranded crystalline DNA structure. And the hallmark, if you start to study anything on crystalline DNA, is sensitivity, which means if your DNA and my DNA is crystalline and not carbon-based, if I would slap you, I will feel the pain instantly as you feel it.
Because you realize that you're all one.
One, absolutely. So the crystalline state becomes a conductor that blends consciousness into one being.
And you realize that when you're all one, when you hurt somebody else, you're hurting yourself.
Completely. Which naturally would make humans a far more sensitive and a mature race.
So here's the question. Since you've been through the whole awakening and shift, and we're going through it every day, it never ends once it starts, what have you noticed about your health, about the way you think about things? Have you had to deprogram certain, ideals that you had growing up?
Yes.
What are some of the biggest changes?
I would say probably the stripping of your identity is the biggest challenge that you go through, because you grow up with a matrix, literally speaking, and that matrix is influenced by your culture, by your family, by your beliefs. And then once you come into this space, because the paradigm of time, space and consciousness starts to alter in your head, you suddenly find it very difficult to find or make peace with a limiting system that you have been born in.
And you don't fit in with it
anymore. You don't fit in, That's been really big. It was a very big challenge at the level of the family, a bigger challenge at the level of your peers, because you're now moving in completely into virgin territory, I would say.
And it's a territory that we have yet to create, and there's no path or manual for it.
That's right.
And I noticed a lot of people were walking away from jobs, relationships that were no longer aligned with their frequency. It's been really difficult for a lot.
That's right, yes. But the funny part is that for every difficult step that you take, it's almost as if there's some invisible force out there that gives you the resources to not only take the step, but shows you and makes you experience a reality that is a zillion times better than what you walked away from. Which means it's about somehow getting that courage and the faith to walk.
But I also find, I mean, I'm sure you felt this, you know you can't fit in, you can't go back. Going forward, you have no idea where the path is, but you can't stay stagnant. So you have no choice.
Absolutely. So you walk blind.
Yes.
But it's a fantastic walk. The journey taught me how to live the madness of life with this moment without really wondering too much or worrying too much where this path is going to go. Because what was also becoming very clear as I started to get into this more and more, that the end result of this process is not a pre-decided or a predefined end result. It's a result that's going to take into cognizance the collective state of consciousness that we all are able to reach out in. So this is not my journey alone or your journey alone. That is what is different about the shift this time. Mm-hmm. So if we look at history, there have been people, Jesus Christ has done this before, Kabir has done this before, Guru Nanak has done this before, where they've been able to exit the earth school completely. Yeah. So if we look at the term ascension, it comes from the verb to ascend. And the term to ascend in this parlance means the ability to leave the system, leaving nothing behind on earth. Now, this is not to say that your physical body will also go up, but your physical body is made up of 5 elements on earth, and those 5 elements belong to earth. So, when you pass away or you die, and if your body survives on earth even for 1 nanosecond after that, you already created death with the planet. You will have to come back. So your whole cycle of life and death is controlled completely by your physical body that stays back.
Well, they say, you know, like Jesus or Guru Nanak, they're like ascended masters where they don't come back. I mean, after I went through the dark night of the soul, I kept saying, I never want to come back on planet Earth. And you don't.
Yeah, so the key for that is, when you are dying, you have to be able to withdraw your consciousness from the 5 elements so completely that there is no body.
Yeah, I feel now that because of my experience, there is a detachment between my identity, my ego, my body. I still take care of it, but I don't identify with it like I used to.
Oh, 100%. So psychologically, your understanding of age and time changes.
It's gone.
Yeah, it changes.
Yeah, I think I still look the same at 23, but no. But
it just changes.
But it's true, and they say that, you know, you age less, you know, you heal yourself.
Yeah.
Like you say, you have downloads, you have knowledge of how to do things or where to go because you're open to a higher power.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And the funny part is, as you start to walk, talk, breathe, and live this, you slowly start magnetizing people who are reflecting the space.
Like
so
you and me.
It's almost as if we are slowly creating or moving into a world that we know exists, but it's not fully there. Now, with every such meet, with every such talk, and with every such person on this planet who listens to this and resonates with it, we got that much more creative consciousness that's going to make this journey easier. These are repetitive time cycles. So when this has happened before, because humans didn't know how to handle the shift, it was very destructive. This time around, your gambit is much bigger because there are far more many souls on this planet who understand this concept. And the collective consciousness that we're building up as a field, force field, is going to make this transition that much more happier, that much more smoother.
Well, it's funny because when I went through it, I really was alone, and it was only somebody on YouTube that helped me. And then my friend went through it a year later. I was helping her. Then my sister went through it, and it
There
was
you
like,
are.
oh, I get
So
it now, you know?
there you are.
Yeah.
So that's the ripple effect chain. And so the more this web builds, the stronger and more beautiful this shift is going to be. So as a planet of duality, which is how Earth has been, with the spin of the planet, it's like a tuning fork. So as the fork frequency increases, you have the forks beginning to separate. And that's exactly where we are now.
And do you find that a lot of people have kind of left your reality because their frequency is low,
correct,
yours is high, and you haven't done anything, and you
it's
know
just
they're
natural.
meant to leave.
So you're seeing the Earth is no longer gray anymore. No. It's slowly getting polarized into black and white. And that's a churn that's happening. So politically, religiously, there is also a lot of pressure building up on this side of the fence. And at the same time, there is a lot of light work that is also exploding on the other side of the fence. So you're seeing this polarization happen. Suddenly, everybody who doesn't fit the matrix is slowly making an exit. And you sometimes feel, was the previous existence a dream?
Yes.
Was it like,
oh my God, that's exactly.
So it feels surreal.
It totally feels surreal.
Yeah, so.
And it sometimes I would try and grip onto old things back from I feel like it was a past life or another life, and I'm holding on to it with dear life because it's
correct,
part of me,
it's
but
your
it's
identity.
not. It's really scary. So let's say in 20 years from now, what do you envision people who have woken up, what do you envision planet Earth to look like or be like?
Well, firstly, it will be far more greener, far more cleaner. So if you see the entire movement towards renewable energy, what is renewable energy doing? It's reducing carbon footprint. What is reducing carbon footprint doing? You're moving from a carbon-based structure to a crystalline structure. So it's literally as if within the system, different forces at different levels, not just spiritually, but even in hardcore action, are moving to a sustainable Earth. So you're going to have a responsible species on this planet. You're going to understand that nature and we are one. We're also going to understand that across caste, creed, race, and religion, we are still one consciousness. And so what I do affects you. Time is getting compressed.
Yes.
Which means the luxury that we had in the dark ages of choice and consequence, where I could behave the way I wanted because its consequence wasn't going to hit me in this lifetime, now doesn't exist because as my hand comes close to the flame, it burns. So obviously, I go through a huge shift in terms of presence and connection. Now that makes for lovely living.
Yeah.
Because you're moving from competition to cooperation.
Yeah.
You're moving from understanding that there is no rat race here. You're moving from a space where you appreciate that the creative force up there is not a moron. So if you are on the planet, there is a unique role for you and you're going to live that, and with it you will get whatever you require to make your life work. So you find more and more people moving into their natural passion.
Yeah.
So this change is going to come in education, it's going to come in culture, it's going to come in finances. You see so many countries now making baby steps to go digital. So you're doing away with the corruption of paper money.
Yeah, and I do feel that people will connect more on a soul level than on a personality, ego, culture, religious level.
Absolutely, because if I am operating off the security and the presence of who I am, you are no threat. And if you are no threat, I have no reason to not accept you or love you for what you are. All our competitions come because of insecurity. Because if I suddenly find I'm not sure of my position in life, I suddenly see you as very smart, then I'm threatened. And now there is a conflict between us. So once we clearly realize this, that we have a unique blueprint, and that blueprint is going to be delivered no matter what, you find peace with it. And with that peace comes all the resources of the planet.
Yeah.
So I don't think the creator struggled a lot to create life, which means life on earth truly cannot be so difficult. I often tell my students, what keeps you alive is your breathing, and your breathing is bloody easy. Yeah. So if your breathing is easy, how can life be difficult?
Well, you know, I'm as a metaphysician as well, and I do believe that we all have soul contracts when we make them.
Yes.
And I'm happy that I made a soul contract with you today to interview you today, because it's been so nice to talk to somebody on camera about this that has the knowledge.
You know, it's destiny, it's providence, it's fate, or it's a force conspiring to put one more brick towards a better space. So this has been an awesome space. Thank you so much. And I truly hope and pray that this awareness gives a sensible answer to people who are feeling it inside. They can't debate it. But now they have a framework.
Yeah.
And they know they're not alone. Good luck to everybody.
Yeah, and I know that I look to people on social media and YouTube to help me, so I hope this has helped somebody who's going through or trying to understand what they're going through.
Oh, absolutely. For sure. Please know that you're not alone.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Doctor.
Pleasure. Thank you.